This is Office Talk with Annette Stepanian. Hey everyone, this is Annette Stepanian with our first episode of Office Talk. Cue the confetti and bring in the band. I am thrilled to have as our first guest Brooke Saxon-Spencer, who is the founder and editor of Belong magazine. So in our talk, we're going to be going over what inspired her to leave the healthcare industry to start this digital and print publication, all designed to celebrate the art of community and blogging, social media, and entrepreneurship. So if you don't know Brooke already, she is an amazingly authentic person. She will tell it to you as it is. She is an open book, and I hope that you'll enjoy and get a lot of nuggets out of this episode. Let's go to the show. Hey, Brooke. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So the reason why I wanted to have you on is because I find you super inspirational and just full of so much wisdom. And you're up to some pretty exciting things these days as the founder and editor of Belong magazine. And just as someone who's been kind of standing back and watching you grow and evolve, I wanted to introduce you to my listeners so they could get some insight and just learn about your journey. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got to what you're doing today?
I sure can. I wish it was a real short and concise, like, oh, I just decided. And in a sense I did, but I came from a long history of years in healthcare, and that career was coming to an end. And I had the opportunity to kind of step back and think, if I could do anything I wanted, what would it look like? Like, not many people get the privilege of taking a step back from, their career because you're so busy and caught up in it. So I kind of stepped back and I thought, if I could have my dream job, what would it be? And I really felt that my years in healthcare, I had also spent doing blogs for creativity, like on the side. I had tried several different blogs and felt very frustrated by them, felt like I couldn't find my community. It was very hard, especially because it was just a very, sideline type of a deal. But it was very hard because the web's so big, and trying to figure out how to connect with people in meaningful ways, not just like, hey, but trying to find your people and find your tribe can be kind of intimidating, especially for someone like me who's an introvert. And so as I tried to pull kind of all my different thoughts together about what something could look like, but then like what it would look like, well, my background in photography, graphic design, and creative writing automatically kind of fell into this. Well, I'd love to do some sort of publication, but what kind of publication and why would I want to, why is it going to be different and what purpose would it serve? And it just kept coming back to this word belong, and how I felt like I spent years trying to find my place and where I belonged in this realm of the blogosphere, and just really struggling. And then knowing that I can't be the only one. You can Google and search for whatever you want, but it's still really hard to narrow things down. And so the idea of a curated content, a magazine that was geared toward women, highlighting things that would be helpful for them, not only in their blogging, but in their relational lives, and just to inspire them and remind them that they're not alone, and that the blogosphere is really big, the web is really big, but that there still is a great community to find. You may not find your place all over the web, but there are little pockets, and you can find your place where you belong in there. So that's kind of what led me to start the magazine. And as far as the actual starting of it, it literally was just me saying, what is holding me back from doing this? And it was obviously fear of failure, fear of not having money, fear of all of those standard fears, and just saying, well, I can't let fear hold me back because I'll never get anywhere. I may not know what I'm doing, but I'm going to take the first step. And the first step was finding contributors. And so we set a deadline for the pilot and we ran with it. So we, as in me, I always say we, because that's what one does when one has their own business, right?
Yeah. And you wear multiple hats. So you are kind of like 10 different people.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so that's how Belong started, and it's been so fun and so rewarding and amazing seeing the process and how it's grown, and the women that have been part of it, including yourself, like sharing their knowledge in really concrete ways to help encourage and enable other women to pursue whatever it is that they're doing or want to do. So
Yeah, and I think we're probably a little bit older. And so we belong to the generation of like before social media
Mhm.
and before email. And we grew up. And so I always, when I talk to other entrepreneurs that are older, we feel that disconnect.
Yes,
Where
absolutely.
we're like, yeah, this is so great. I get to meet such amazing people like yourself. If the internet didn't exist, I would never have met you.
Right.
But you want that connection one on one. And I think what's really interesting about the way you have held on to that vision and executed that vision is you're walking the walk. A lot of people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. They say they want community, but there isn't any at the end of the day. So,
Yeah.
what are some of the challenges that you see other entrepreneurs facing? Because I know you're kind of in touch with so many of them on a day-to-day basis. What are some of the challenges that you see other entrepreneurs facing when it comes to creating a constructive community that supports them both on a professional level, but also on a personal level?
I think a lot of them are just afraid to reach out. They don't know where to go, first of all. And then once they are in a place, they sit in the shadows. And I'm perfectly guilty of this myself. Being an introvert, I love the shadows. But I think that everyone wants, to have a place. And I think that we forget that because everyone else does too, you reaching out is really confirming someone else or confirming another community that they mean something and that they have a place. So I think that sometimes it's stepping outside of yourself and focusing on other people is almost key in finding community instead of looking at what do I need all the time. What am I looking for? What can these people do for me? But reversing it and saying, what can I offer a community here, here, or here that really actually builds the community and you in it.
Yeah. And I think it's also about not having everything figured out. I know
Yes.
I've kind of lived my life thinking there was a formula and searching for that formula. And every time something happens and I think, okay, there really isn't a formula and I don't have to have it all figured out. And I can just reach out to somebody just to reach out. There doesn't have to
And
be.
I think it really is important. I had several people saying, I wish that there was an online forum. And I kept thinking, well, I don't know how to do that. I know how to make a group, but I don't know how to moderate. I have to wait until I have that figured out. I'm like, don't you have to have a schedule for what you do on what days? That's how I see all these other groups working. And I finally was like, you know what? Forget it. We're just going to start the group. I'm going to open it up. And the idea is that, no, I don't want it to be a promotional place necessarily, but I do want it to be a place where people can ask questions openly. They don't have to have it figured out. They can depend on other people, throw input. They can celebrate their victories. We want to celebrate with one another because seeing what someone else is able to do, that's super encouraging to me. I'm like, well, if she can do it, maybe either she can help me or it's just encouragement in general. But I think that not having it figured out and having a place, it'd be able to admit that and have people oh, totally, we're all in the same boat. Because essentially, I think we are all in the same boat. Nobody knows everything.
Yeah, even though we pretend to, and we hide
yes,
behind
even though we do.
titles and followers. And,
Yep.
Yeah. And I have to say, so we got in touch probably a few months ago, and, I've been following you on Instagram, and I just love how authentic you are. Like you've told me before, it's you're such an open book. And where does that come from, that confidence or that security to be so vulnerable in such an open forum?
I think some of it is obviously personality. And I know I keep saying that I'm an introvert, and I really truly am when it comes to large groups of people. But part of the introversion thing, when I'm with people, being with people is exhausting to me. So I don't necessarily get charged up from being with groups of people. So I feel when I am with them, I don't want to do small talk. That's just a waste of time. Let's get to the meat and potatoes here. Let's get down what's under the surface. I want people to know me for who I really am. And if they don't like it, then that's fine. But here's who I am. And I would love to interact with you, whatever. But I almost feel by not being myself, it's almost I'm leading someone on.
Interesting.
And I don't like that. I don't have it figured out. So if you think that I do, yikes.
But were you always this way?
I was not this way until probably a couple of years ago, and especially starting Belong. I realized that it was really important for me to not act like I had it all together because I don't. And, there is a balance between being professional and having like
being a hot mess.
Yeah, and like looking like you still have it somewhat together, but then being honest about the fact that there are hard things that happen and things aren't always great and you're struggling and you don't know what to do and you're depressed or you're anxious. Like those are all real things that a lot of women really struggle with.
You walk that line really well. I think you present things in such a beautiful way. I definitely see that drive or that kind of movement or campaign or whatever you want to call it of people being more authentic, but they're hiding behind things, and myself included. I always think, am I being vulnerable enough? But
yeah, there's still a fine line in my mind for using authenticity as a marketing tool and being authentic for truly being authentic. And I try to be very careful about that. Because I think that sometimes when you say, well, I'm saying it like it is because that's what being authentic is. Well, not necessarily. Like, you can still filter. And I think that sometimes we give ourselves too much license with that word. So I try to be very careful, especially when it comes, like, it's okay for me to share my own feelings, but, I would never drag someone else into that unless it was in a really positive way.
Yeah.
Because it can get yucky if you're not careful. And you don't want to always, a lot of times authenticity is admitting failures and the stuff that people don't normally see. And you don't want people to think that you're always a downer.
Yeah.
So, in posting those things, I try to post them and then also remind myself in that post or, as a reminder to everyone else too, that, this is just what it is.
So the process of starting a magazine, a print magazine, I know you have it also digital. It's all available online as well. But a print magazine seems a little bit maybe archaic. I don't know. I love it. I love holding things in my hands and, having something tangible. What have been some of the challenges and like the lessons learned throughout this journey of starting an actual physical magazine that gets mailed to people?
Well, you're totally right. And of course, the first thing that everyone thinks of when they think of a new magazine is like, what the heck? Print is dying. But then at the same time, you see all these like stationary places opening and whatever. So, you're like, I don't know. But I think for me, knowing that there is a large creative group out there that are like me in the sense that they want something very tactile, people. And, I still subscribe to like 20 magazines. Now, do I read them all? No, because there's just no time. But I do thumb through them all. I love it. Yeah. Like, I would not ever look at them if they were not in my hands. So digital for me was just kind of like, well, I guess I better make it digital because that's just what you do now. And there are a group of people that only read it digitally, and they're significantly younger than me. But the challenge have been, first of all, the cost. It's not cheap to print. And then accessibility has been a little bit of a struggle as far as, the magazine itself is $12. And then if you don't live near somewhere that has it, which, it wasn't available anywhere else except online for a long time, you had to pay to ship it. And that's $6. So you're like, wow, it's like a huge investment for one issue of a magazine. So it's been hard because I get that. And at some point, as the magazine grows and as we get more people involved on the sponsorship and advertising side, some of those other costs can come down. But honestly, like I charge less for shipping than it costs me to ship, because we ship priority, because I can't ship media. I mean, it's like all these little things, like I can't ship media mail because there's advertisements in the magazine. Therefore, it doesn't qualify as media mail anymore. It's like all these things that you would think to do, it doesn't work. And then, you try parcel post and it takes 2 weeks and people are upset that it took so long. Trying to balance the customer service aspect with all of that honestly has been a challenge, and just kind of keeping the cost down. But like I said, at some point, as things grow, that hopefully, we can work on the shipping side of things. And now that it's available in Barnes & Noble, that helps a lot with accessibility, which is great.
Can you talk a little bit about the Barnes & Noble's distribution? Because I think that is amazing. And it came pretty early on in your journey, which, thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. So Barnes & Noble, actually, you don't go to them directly. You have to go through their distributor. They have someone who handles all of their magazines. And you have to submit basically an application along with 5 copies or so of your actual publication that they then take to some sort of meeting that they have where they go through all these new submissions and decide what they think would be appropriate and what would actually sell on the shelves of the store. You know, they tell you whether or not they want to work with you. And I took the chance and I submitted that issue 1 is what I sent to them. So I did start probably earlier than maybe I should have, but it was to my benefit in the long run. But it's an investment. There is a fee to work with them in itself. You know, then you have to ship magazines to 3 different distribution centers across the country, and you only get paid for the issues that sell.
Oh, wow.
And then of that, you only get paid, like, it's a pretty significant, like, cut on the cover cost. So in all honesty, like, at this stage in the business and the amount that we're printing and the cost for printing, it's a losing deal for us to be there financially.
Yeah.
However, as far as growing the community and having the magazine accessible, and that obviously has been a huge benefit. So the hope is that, you know, even itself out and at least pay for itself at some point.
That's the dream, right?
It is the dream.
This is so helpful because there's so many things that I know I take for granted, right? Like, you don't realize how much goes into, for instance, publishing a magazine. Or I used to do jewelry design. I had a jewelry company. Like, so much goes into getting a piece made that when you're at the department store and you're, you know, walking through the glass cases, you don't realize how many hands touch that, how much thinking and strategy went to it. So this is helpful both for people, I think, who are interested in maybe starting a magazine, but also people to just appreciate what goes into and the effort that goes into producing these things.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, in anything, an item that you see in a store, like, it didn't just end up there. And most likely, in many cases, the individual who created that product reached out to several people along the way, had meetings with them in order to establish a relationship to then, you know, like, several steps later, actually get in a store. It doesn't just happen that somebody's like, hey, you know, let's put that here.
Yeah.
You know, and like, you have to produce it and you have to mail it and you have to, there's a lot of steps involved and it gets complicated.
Which makes the $12 price tag seem pretty reasonable, right?
Right.
Affordable.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. But again, you know, it's really hard for me. It's so hard for me. It's so discouraging when people are upset about the cost and about the shipping and whatnot, because I honestly, like, the magazine isn't, you know, it's about community, and I want women to be able to get their hands on it, and I want them to be inspired and encouraged by it. But, like, there's that line where I'm like, it's still costing me money to do this, and that, like, it can't go on like that forever and ever.
You should do a post about what goes into making it.
Yeah.
Like, do like a day behind the scenes or whatever. Like,
yeah, that would
behind
actually
the scenes of issue whatever 5, and just how many man hours go into it in a very subtle way of suggesting to your readers that, hey, there's a lot that goes behind this.
Yeah, and in the process of working, you know, I have a full-time job and a consulting job on the side of this.
And you have 3 kids. I just found that out.
Yeah.
I can't even take care of myself and my husband. So tell us about that. How do you juggle it all?
Oh, my word. I am the worst juggler ever. I mean, like, even being just an entrepreneur in general, you know, like, there's a lot of stuff to keep on top of all of the time. You feel like you're being pulled in a million different directions. You're in charge of several tasks. A lot of them don't relate to one another, even though they're all part of the same business.
Yeah, and that switching gears constantly slows you down. You're like, oh, wait a minute.
And it's like the email, like, all of my emails come to the same account. So one minute I'm doing magazine, and the next minute I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is, like, about a healthcare issue, which is you know, my other job. And then, of course, in the background is, like, you know, there's cartoons and Xbox and, you know, kids walking in.
Pokemon Go.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I'm really bad as far as I will work all the time because my office is at home. I will sit and work all the time. And so my kids see the back of my head. So what's important for me is trying to take, even if it's little chunks, like to go take them swimming for an hour. It doesn't have to be a whole day. Like, make sure that I'm making connections with them and making them feel like they actually are worth my time. That's been important for me as far as family. And my husband is super gracious and supportive. He's, like, beyond amazing. And, you know, he knows that my favorite thing to do is to sit and watch a movie, sitting there with my computer and, you know, next to him while he watches the movie. And I may or may not pick up what's going on. But, I mean, it's a really tough balance. It is really hard. And I don't have a really good answer. With 3 kids that are all interested in different things, like, it's tough. You know, my husband and I both just trying to make sure that we're taking some time out to connect with each one of them and talk with them and do stuff with them, even if it's not for a long, long time.
I guess it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is there really isn't a formula. And you just do what you can and you do the best you can every single day. And sometimes it looks decent and sometimes it's a hot mess. That's all we can do.
Ideally, I would spend all my time with my kids, but at the same time, it's really important to remind my kids that, first of all, they're not the center of the universe. There's a big world out there. They're a part of it, and they're a contributing member of that, and a contributing member of our family, but my life doesn't revolve around them. Does it revolve around me? No, it's bigger than that too.
Yeah.
But there's responsibilities that we have as far as I work so that I can, participate in these extracurricular activities so that we can live in the house that we live in. And, we could let that go and, mommy doesn't have to work at all, but then mommy would be a very miserable person because that's not what I was made to do.
Yeah.
I don't feel being a mom, again, here's my blunt honesty, has not been fun for me. I adore my children. It's hard. Having babies was not the most glorious moment of my life. It was oh crap, what did I do? I have this thing now. It's kind of in the way. I'm so selfish.
Funny. No, it's so funny and it's so honest and real and I love it. I mean, I was visiting a friend yesterday one of my best friends who just had a baby, and she's just it is not pretty. It is hard, and I don't care how pretty they make it look on Instagram or whatever, or it's tough. And I know my husband and I are considering having kids and kind of starting that phase in our lives, and I am freaked out. Partly just the whole process of pregnancy, but also just the idea, you can't return these people. There's no 30-day money back guarantee.
Trust me, I so wish there had been on 2 of my 3. Oh man, that would have been great.
And I'm it's forever.
It is. And the one thing that it has really taught me is about how incredibly selfish I am.
Yeah.
Which is not an easy lesson to learn. Yeah. So it was learning that the world didn't revolve around me, basically, which it should, in my opinion. That there's this other thing that just needs me to survive, and they cry, and it's not always fun. And again, it's different for everyone, and I think that that's important for people to know, whether it's a job, whether it's parenting, whatever, that the experience is different for everybody, and that's okay. You don't have to love being a stay-at-home mom. It doesn't mean you don't love your kids.
Yeah.
You don't have to love being pregnant. It doesn't mean that you're not going to love your child. I hated being pregnant. Some people love it. They love that feeling. It was not that for me.
Yeah.
I felt like there was an alien in my body.
In between, being nauseous and swollen ankles and all that stuff. Yeah.
So I think that it's important to remind people that whatever your experience is, that's fine. You do not have to fit into the mold of someone else's.
But do you think that comes with just age and experience and just...
Partly, and I think it comes with being able to have conversations with people and being authentic and being open. With business is the same way. Business doesn't come easy for everyone, and it's not supposed to. That's not reality.
Yeah, if it were easy, everybody would do it.
Right. And, it's hard. And some days it's really hard and you want to throw in the towel and, you're laying on the floor thinking, what did I do? And why am I even going to keep going? You question it. And
look, part of it is you start this journey, you don't know what you're doing. It's such a huge learning curve. And so you get to a point where you're constantly like I said, you're looking for that formula. You're comparing your today to somebody else's, 5 years out. They've been working at it. And it's good to be inspired by that, but to constantly compare yourself to that. I mean, I've fallen into that. I started my jewelry line. I wanted to be like Kate Spade. I'm wait a minute. Me, I can't compare myself to a Kate Spade or a national, international retailer. You just have to work with where you are. And I think especially women, we don't give ourselves credit. I know I don't. I never give myself credit. It's as soon as I meet that goal, it's 5 minutes later, I'm okay, next. The bar is just moved up again. And I think that's human nature. That's what keeps us growing and evolving. But you have to take that moment or time to just acknowledge your value. I think
you're so right. And I'm so guilty of that as far as, not celebrating the small victories, if you want to call it that. But seeing, it's a check off on your to-do list almost. But you're but wait, that was big.
That was huge in other people's eyes. And I always say, don't compare yourself to others, but look at who you may be inspiring, right? So something that may become so common to you or so ordinary or maybe not exciting to you might be such an inspiration or motivation for somebody else. And like when you put your mindset on that, it just shifts, like the energy shifts.
It does. Absolutely. And when people comment, that they're encouraged, like that for me that keeps me going. Knowing that a few people out there that actually took the time to comment on whatever it is that I'm putting out there, that means so much. I mean, everybody's busy, but like they took time to tell me that what I'm doing matters. Wow, I need to make sure I'm doing that for other people as well, whether they're big, whether they're small.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. They're people. And we all want to be encouraged in our big and small victories.
So for people who are starting a business or maybe are in business, do you have any kind of like tidbits that you wish you knew when you first started? I know we've touched upon a lot, but
from my most recent experiences, I would say that all new business people or owners, whoever's looking to start a business, you're going to hear this a bazillion times that, you need to make sure that you have things in order as far as forming a company, an LLC, whatever it is. And obviously that's,
that's my
can
jam.
of worms over there. So, I'm going to get all of the terminology wrong, but whatever. Like they can all talk to you about that. But get all that in order, talk to you.
I love it.
Like that, how important that piece is at the beginning and how important getting your finances kind of situated, all of that foundation and framework. You think because you're not anything, you start a business as nothing, you think, well, I don't need that because I'm not anything. Like I'm not doing anything. But the further on you go, the busier you get, the more complicated things get. And if you let it slide, it's going to bite you in the butt.
Oh my God. It's like, yes, this is like what I feel like I'm trying to tell, especially this community that we're in and the community that we serve. This is it. Like you got to get those ducks in a row. You got to build that foundation. And
talk to the girl who doesn't I did not want to spend the money on it. In all honesty, that's what kept me from doing it. Like, I'm like, I don't want to spend the money. Like,
why? Is it because you just didn't
money?
You didn't see the value, right? To you, it was an expense.
Exactly. And it wasn't helping me produce a magazine. It just seemed like another expense. And, I'm like trying to limit those, obviously, because the magazine was coming out of my pocket. But, from recent experience of having a legal issue come up, it was a huge eye-opener as far as, whoa, these can come out of nowhere. They may not make sense. People can accuse you of anything at any time. Do you have a framework in place if you were to need it? Because you would be surprised when you do need it, I think.
Yeah.
Nobody expects that stuff to happen, and we all think that, well, it's not going to happen to me because I'm not doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or my business doesn't do anything that someone would do that would accuse me of whatever it is. But I think that there aren't enough people out there that aren't gracious, and you have to protect yourself and also know when to cut your losses, when it comes to people coming after you for various things, taking the time to look at each situation, treating each individual as an individual, knowing that they come from someplace. And trying to decide, where do you want to pursue, in this case, like a legal situation, where do you want to pursue it and get someone involved? Where do you just want to try to appease the individual by offering them whatever it is they're asking for, even if you know that they're wrong? Like sometimes it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I used to do litigation for pharmaceutical companies and medical device manufacturers. And it's unfortunate because I remember we had one case where the guy was basically being, they just saw big pockets. So they went after it. They made a ridiculous claim. But at a certain point, you have to make a business decision. And this particular client was very close to the product. And so it was just really hard for him to just settle and move on because he knew it was ridiculous. But it's just unfortunately
that's so true. You get so close. I think that's the key right there, is that you're so close to it that you don't see the bigger picture sometimes.
Yeah.
And you take it so personally. Oh. And I don't know that there's any way, for me, not to take those things personally, because I've poured everything into this, right? It's personal to me. Everything about Belong is personal to me. Yeah. But at the same time, treating it like the business that it really is from the outside is important. And that's when community comes into play again, as far as being able to reach out and just talk through the situation before you do anything. Whether it's to talk to just anyone that's in the community, just lay out the situation, because you never know, they might talk you off the ledge from saying something really stupid.
Yep.
Because sometimes it's not worth a fight. or whatever. You don't have to be right. I had someone in my situation say, you didn't do anything wrong, but it may be best for you just to try to find a way to put this behind you. And that stuck with me as I was going through the process. Who knows? Only a judge can determine whether you've done something wrong. And when it comes to, those types of situations, and my intentions matter to me. So I know that I didn't intentionally do anything, but still, the bigger picture of kind of saying, I don't have to be right here. It's not worth the time. It's not worth the energy. It's not worth the money to invest in getting, no offense, getting an attorney involved.
No, I tell people all the time, there are two places you'd never want to be if you can help it. One is an operating room and one is a courtroom. So if you can go through your life without being in either of those two rooms, I think you are going to live a very long life.
But what the whole situation did for me was really open my eyes to the exposure and the risks, which is super scary. First of all, it made me want to quit. But then it opened my eyes to saying, okay, let's be realistic. What should I have had in place here? Whether it's contracts, whether it's other agreements, whether it's the terms and conditions on my website. Those things are all really, really important. The structure of your organization. Like we've said, I didn't know what I was doing coming in, and it's okay not to know. And you learn from the process. You just hope that it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg in learning. But this is one thing that, you'll hear over and over again for people, to get these legal things in place. It may not make sense, but it's so, so important to do it, to just bite the bullet, if you're serious about what you're going to do and you're committed, pay the money and get it set up for peace of mind.
Yeah, it costs a lot less now than it does later down the road. And I think for you, with the experience that you had, it costs you now and it feels like it hurts, and it does hurt. But it's better to have that lesson now, fix what you got to fix, and then move on. And you're going to get more of these down the road, because every time we're human beings, and unfortunately we live in a society where it can get litigious, and people will see from the outside that, oh, this person has success, this person has something, and maybe they feel wronged in some way. So maybe their concerns are valid, but it's possible. So,
well, and it also taught me that, remembering, just like you said, that everyone is an individual. They do have a background. They have a backstory. Something triggered them to respond in such a way. And it might not be just me and whatever the current situation is.
Yep.
And just reminded me that just like I desperately want to be treated, be gracious with people. I want people to be gracious toward me. I'm not perfect, obviously. I make mistakes. There's typos in the magazine. I accidentally forget to, put a name here, or in the current issue, oh my goodness, poor Sky McLean, I spelled her name wrong on everything. So not only is her name wrong, but now all of the social media handles are wrong. So
Sky McLean will put your links in the show notes. So at least.
I don't think anyone has any idea. I felt sick, literally sick, and just so defeated, knowing that I'd made such a huge error that was going to be so disappointing to her. And it felt like I was disrespecting her in a way. And she was so incredibly gracious about the situation. It made me cry. And those are the people I'm used to working with. And I'm immensely grateful for them, because we're not perfect. And you will see Sky in the next issue. She's going to do another piece for us, thankfully. But, it's humbling sometimes too, because it's remembering I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to hurt some people's feelings. I'm going to disappoint them. I'm going to mess up. But should that stop me from doing anything? No.
And it doesn't define you. It doesn't define who you are. It's
how I handle it does.
How you handle it. Exactly. And thankfully, I feel like, again, from an outsider looking in, it seems like you have, for the most part, attracted people who are reasonable, they're compassionate, they're understanding. And I think that comes from you because you lead with that.
Yeah, I hope so. And I constantly try to remind myself and those that are kind of in the Belong community, just remembering to be gracious and appreciating that the community is so gracious with me, because I have a lot of my fair share of errors going on. So, I always laugh when there's an error in either a blog post or somewhere where it's a grammatical error. I'm publishing a magazine and I have grammatical errors. What a horrible, horrible thing to do, right?
I had typos in my blog post, and someone actually left a comment highlighting them and saying, questioning my credibility as a lawyer. And I was like, I'm human. I'm sorry. Spell
It's
check
just not a
didn't
contract.
yeah, it's in a blog post. I'm sorry,
And
don't like
in
it.
honesty, I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but blog posts, man, those things got to get cranked out fast for small business owners that don't have time to focus on a blog. Like,
Yeah.
that's not all I do. That's a small
It's
piece.
a small piece so that I can keep doing the work that I do.
Yes. So I'm like,
which,
lucky there was a blog post. Like,
yeah.
get typos. Like, yeah. It's been so refreshing to, surrounded by a community who is extremely gracious. I feel very blessed by that. And yeah, it's such a great community of women who really seem to care about each other and the successes of one another and looking for ways to, I used this in a post the other day, like ways to support each other, real ways to support one another, not just saying, you got this or whatever, but like looking for tangible ways, whether it's through advice, a contact name, doing something for them, sending them a note. I just had 14 canvases show up on my front porch. Like, talk about tears.
Oh my gosh. Tell the listeners about it.
Okay. So during this legal issue that we were talking about, just prior to that, I had asked a friend who I only know from the internet. Mind you, I've never met her. We've never spoken. We've only traded emails and whatnot. But when this situation arose, I just felt inclined to say, could you keep me in your prayers? I'm going through something really tough with the magazine right now. And she's totally supportive, sent me this incredible email that was just like exactly what I needed to hear about, reminding me to look at the bigger picture, not to get lost. And a few days later, just after that situation had resolved, this gigantic package shows up on my front porch. And I open it. It took me like an hour to open it all. And it was canvas after canvas of posts that Belong has had with like inspirational quotes, such as like free to fail and you are enough and you belong. And my mission statement printed on a large canvas. And the best one was this like 5-foot tall one that has all of the words that she used to describe what the magazine is doing.
Oh my
and
goodness.
It's things like encourage and present and gather and give and enough. And it was so heartfelt. And she had done this just prior to my situation. She'd already finished it. So it was like the timing was unbelievable. But the fact that someone would do that for me, oh my word, humbling is all get out, I will tell you. Like, so humbling, because I don't know about you, but I certainly don't think I'm worth that much work. Like, it was a lot of work. The fact that she like sent it with this note of support, and wow, it just blew me away. And honestly, and I'm not saying that everyone should send,
12 canvases
exactly to your friend, but just remembering looking at other people and seeing other people, like actually seeing them for, who they are and seeing their need, or not even doing that, but just feeling inclined to send an email, which I've also gotten so many of those, and I keep every single one. I print them out because, like I said, I'm old school.
Yeah.
I have a print magazine, so I print out emails, but I have a file of emails that when things get a little rough,
it's a feel-good file.
Yes, and I think like those individuals they will never know the impact that they've had on me through their taking the time to do that. And, though it was a huge, huge sentiment ended up on my front porch, the idea that that's the kind of community that is being formed is just blowing me away. Women who are willing to go above and beyond to encourage others and in tangible ways, that's just amazing to me.
Yep. We're our greatest resource, that's for sure.
Yeah, so true.
So with that said, I like to end the episode with a question I ask all of my guests, and it's one thing I know for sure is, and you get to fill in the blank.
The first thing that comes to my mind is, I don't know what I'm doing.
Period. Full stop.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but there's always a but after that one. But I'm figuring it out, and I'm going to do it anyway.
I love it. I love that. So, Brooke, where can people find you? This amazing community that we keep talking about, where can people find you?
Thankfully, our handle is the same across all social media.
Oh, how did you score that?
And I don't know. I got lucky. But it's Belong Mag. And then our website wasn't quite as lucky. It's belong-mag.com. But yeah, Instagram is where I hang out most of the time. But we just formed a group on Facebook that, we welcome anyone to. It is a closed group just because you do have some weird people that join. So I just make sure that, they're people real. That are not actual Facebook users, because there's some strange ones that just add themselves to every group.
I know. I have my own Facebook group too, and they'll have like 0 friends, but then they'll belong to like 6,000 groups. And
yeah,
you're like,
exactly. And they don't, I always know when you don't have a profile picture, like,
yeah.
That's like my first red flag. So yeah, so it's not necessarily a way to, like, it's not that you're not accepted in the group. It's just that I'm trying to make sure that,
yeah,
it's in a safe place.
Absolutely.
But that group is just getting going, and I don't know what I'm doing with it. But it's a forum for women to ask questions, to share victories. People keep saying, "What can I share this on there?" I'm like, "Go for it." If I think that it's a bad idea, I'll email you personally.
I'll let you know.
But the idea is to be authentic and open and share with one another.
Awesome. Well, I will link everything up to the show notes, and send me the name of your friend with the canvas. The canvases. We'll put her stuff in there too, because I have show notes, and it's really cool to say show notes. So,
and what I'm excited about, she's also we're working on getting together a way to make those available to the Belong community as well. Because several people have asked, well, how can I get one? And I'm like, well, funny you ask. We're working on that.
Well, yeah, and that'll be available on the website, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's fun too. It's a fun little growth,
Awesome.
The magazine is what it is, but it's fun to see others.
It's a movement. It's not just a magazine. It's a movement. It's a philosophy. So, Brooke, I could talk to you all day. I just adore you. I think you're amazing. And I'm so honored that you joined us here today. And if anybody wants to reach out to Brooke, like we said, we'll put all the links in the show notes, because I have show notes and I love saying show notes. And
do you do a dance too?
I kind of do. I do like a little jiggy.
Awesome.
Is that even a thing? A jig?
Yeah, sure.
It's like an Irish thing, right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. So, with that said, thank you so much. So, what did you think about our first show? I hope you got a lot out of my conversation with Brooke. In particular, I hope you learned that it's okay not to be perfect and to not have everything figured out at this present moment. And if you want to learn more about Brooke, make sure to head on over to the show notes, because I love me some show notes. You can find them over at annettestepanyan.com/podcast. And if you like what you're hearing so far, make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes. This way, you won't miss a single conversation I'm having with some amazing entrepreneurs who are designing a business and life on their terms. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you later.